Today's video is a tiny bit different in format. See, one of my all-time favorite pieces of entertainment is the game Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, we got Arthur Morgan from the game like right here. And that game, with its crazy immersive world and incredible protagonist and a really deep story, just helped me get through some crazy points in my life. This was a couple of years ago. See, some time ago, I revisited that game and just strolling about in my horse, going into a saloon, and I decided to get deep into that world and get some meal before my daily grind in the game, hunting, shooting, and I got some oatmeal. And that just had me thinking, hold on, this is set in 1899 and they had oatmeal. So how old really is oatmeal? And I love how when media, just pop culture stuff, helps you get curious about history. I think that's the best way to study and get engaged in history, not somebody telling you to look up what happened on the 8th century. It's when you have that desire, when something ignites that passion for you to even be curious about what this point of time in our history was. So that got me very curious. And that's what inspired me to make this Wild West inspired oatmeal, where we'll take a look at what is traditional, what you would expect to get if you were slinging mud in 1899 in the old American West. Would you even have the coin to have milk or sugar to add to your oatmeal? Would you just have water, oats, and perhaps molasses if you're lucky? So what I found was steel-cut oatmeals were the most common type of oatmeal back in the 19th century. And oats were eaten actually way before the 1800s. They've been around since the Neolithic and the Bronze Ages. The oats thrive in cold climates, so they grew predominantly in Scotland and Ireland. And if you go back to the US, in the mid-1800s, oats were only thought to be food meant for horses. Hence, in the game itself, you can also give your horse some oat cakes, which I found amazing as well, because these days we have rice cakes, right? I don't really see any oat cakes in the market, but this German grocer called Ferdinand Schumacher saw a market for oatmeal to accommodate the growing immigrant population in the US. And while the breakfast staples back then in the US included eggs, meat, bread, and fruits, for the immigrants settling in these urban cities, like you see in the game over here, they just didn't have the means to afford that. So oats were their primary source of nutrition. So Schumacher eventually founded German Mills American Cereal Company in Akron, Ohio in 1850, while John Stewart founded North Star Mills in Canada. And then very soon after, 1877, Quaker Oats, which we all know, was founded and registered as the first trademarked breakfast cereal. Check out this crazy old ad for Quaker Oats in this article here. So traditionally, oats back then would be made over a hearth, so a pot next to some fire, or it will be made in the open fire on a camp setting, let's say for people traveling between cities. And predominantly it was made with water. So we're boiling some water, and once that water comes up to a boil, that's when we'll add in the steel cut oats along with a generous pinch of salt. And life was much slower back then. You didn't have the hustle bustle, the phone, text messages, phone calls back then, right? So let it simmer for 20-30 minutes until it starts to get thick and the oats become soft. And by the 22-minute point, the oats look like they've thickened quite a bit, and after having a bite, they're soft as well. And for a sweetener, a common thing to add would be either molasses or honey. Back then, sugar and honey were pretty common for families. Eventually, honey's use became lessened as sugar production increased and it became cheaper for people to afford sugar. Molasses, of course, was another shelf-stable option, which I quite enjoy. I never thought of adding molasses to oats before this ever, but it works really, really well. I'm gonna add a tiny bit right now and adjust later on when the oats are actually completely done. Now, what's gonna be a luxury would be milk, because oats were meant for, as I said, the settling population, urban areas, for families, and it's the cheapest, most nutritious way for them to have some sort of sustenance. So milk, if you can find it in the Wild West, add some in there. It's gonna add some richness. And once that milk has had 2-3 minutes to thicken as well, we can get ready to serve. And to serve, we're keeping it very simple, just topping it up with some brown sugar. And then another traditional way to serve it would be some dried fruits or freshly picked berries. So I'm here putting some freshly picked berries from the freezer, defrosted, some blueberries over here, and that of course always works so well with oats. So let me know down below if there's something similar that you have gone through with another piece of media. It can be anything, a game, a TV show, a book. And I'm really curious to know how other medias have changed your life or made you curious about a time of point in our history, in the world, and made you curious to learn. I'll see you all on the next one.